order the, what's today, April 14th meeting of the Carson City Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I would like to start with roll call.
Chairperson Stedfield.
Here.
Vice Chair Bagwell.
Here.
Member Henderson.
I'm present.
Member McQuarrie. Here. Member Nosed. No. Member Sheedy.
Here.
Member Terry. Ex officio member Rosenberg. No. And is Mr. Terry on? No. Okay. A quorum's present.
All right. This time we'll take our first round of public comment. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment at this time.
Very good. On to item 4, approval of minutes. Does anybody have a motion to, or actually have any comments about the minutes from last month? No. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for last month?
I second.
All right. It's a motion by Chaz McQuarrie and a second by Lisa Schutte. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All right. 5A for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding amending CAMPO's Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP, for fiscal years 2021 and 2022, such that unused funds from fiscal year 2021 are budgeted for fiscal year 2022, and the overall budget is increased from $880,568 to $933,649, with a corresponding increase in the 5% local match obligation from $44,028 to $46,682. And I believe this is Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lucia Maloney, Transportation Manager. It's nice to see you in person, Chaz. We haven't seen you here in a while, so thank you for being here. To conduct regular ongoing work program activities, CAMPO is required to maintain an approved Unified Planning Work Program, a UPWP. Although CAMPO does have a 2-year work program that was approved in May of 2020, the amendment for consideration today is for a couple of reasons. First, as it mentions in the staff report, there were unused funds in fiscal year 21. This was due to staff turnover as well as due to just slower deployment of projects generally during the pandemic. The amendment reconciles for unused FY21 funds and carries that funding forward into FY22. Additionally, the proposed amendment reconciles anticipated available funding across the 2 years to reflect the proposed monetary agreement between CAMPO and NDOT, and that's provided as agenda item 5B later this afternoon. And then third, as you'll note in the budget summary and showing the track changes, I'll refer you to packet page number 48. The US 50 East William Street Corridor study has been moved from task 3.5 into a newly created work element 5.0. The original UPWP contained 4 work elements, which are all funded by Consolidated Planning Grant Funding, the CPG. This is our normal UPWP funding. It comes every year. It's very reliable. By shifting the funding into the specific work element 5.0, it essentially frees up our CPG funding to allow for additional transportation planning activities. And this could include the addition of a grant analyst position to support CAMPO's administrative functions. We have discussed the need for an additional person for CAMPO for quite some time, most recently last year here at CAMPO. So approval of this amendment is the first of 3 steps that would be completed before recruitment of the grant analyst could occur. If approved, the next step would be to execute a supplemental funding agreement between CAMPO and NDOT for work element 5.0 to essentially free up those CPG funds. This supplemental funding agreement is anticipated to come to you, to this board, either in May or June for your approval. And then the third step would be approval of the supplemental request, and that's been submitted to the Carson City Board of Supervisors for the additional position. And that will be discussed tomorrow at the Board of Supervisors as part of the draft budget presentation. Although, as I'm rambling along, there still are several hurdles to get this position. The item before you within item 5A is simply for approval of the work program. You'll note in the work program there's asterisks next to work element 5.0 that very clearly identify, supplemental additional federal funding. Should that supplemental funding not come forward, we simply wouldn't do that corridor study. It would be deferred to a future time when funding is available. A 30-day public comment period that meets the requirements of CAMPO's adopted public participation plan did occur. It was from March 3rd to April 4th. Agency comments were received from NDOT and from Carson City staff. Based on the comments, minor refinements were made to the draft document, and that's what's included in Exhibit 2 of your packet for consideration of approval. Regarding the fiscal impact, approval of the work program alone does not in and of itself constitute an obligation for local funding, for local match. Rather, the work plan provides the roadmap for scheduled activities and milestones. The action requested of you as part of Agenda Item 5B is what commits the financial resources as part of the monetary agreement with the 5% match. And that monetary agreement in Item 5B is for work elements 1 through 4, not for work element 5. Again, it's anticipated that that supplemental funding agreement for work element 5 will come in the next couple of months. Consequently, the financial information section describes this and kind of walks it through in a table in the staff report on packet page 11. As I described earlier, the full local share for FY21 for the FY21 work program was invoiced to the partner jurisdictions for the 5%. Since there's carry forward in the work program, it's necessary to carry forward essentially a credit or a prepayment of that local match. So that's carried forward in that table. And then there's a reconciliation, right? So you take the fiscal year 22 work program and you deduct essentially that prepayment for that carry forward amount. And then the final two columns in that table on the right is for work element 5. So should that funding come later, there would necessarily be that 5% local match. I will conclude my comments there, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't like this mic. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Lucia or comments?
Just a comment. I just really appreciate that we work in years, and it's hard for the public to understand that nothing is right away. So you've done a great job putting this project together and informing the CAMPO board of the mission and where we're going. And so this is a nice culmination to be able to potentially add this position and really take us to the next step in our overall strategic plans. So thank you for this.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Lucia? If not, I will call for a motion.
I'll do it. I move to approve amendment number 1 as presented and allow staff to correct any typos noted.
Are there typos noted?
There's typos.
Okay.
There's just a couple little typos. You know how it goes. I think she wants to be a Ms. instead of a Mr., but, little things like that. But anyway, just if they see a typo, sometimes when you do it, go ahead and correct it.
All right. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Oh, and mine's an aye as well. All right. Moving right along. Item 5B for possible action, discussion and possible action to 1, authorize the transportation manager to sign a cooperative agreement with the Nevada Department of Transportation wherein CAMPO receives an anticipated $530,716.80 in consolidated planning grant funds for fiscal year 2022 to be expended in accord with its operative unified planning work program and subject to a 5% local match obligation estimated at $27,932.46. And 2, authorize the transportation manager to sign future amendments to this agreement to extend the time for performance or to approve any change in CBG funding and local match amounts that are within 10% of the present estimates of $530,716.80 and $27,932.46. Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lucia Maloney, Transportation Manager. I think you covered it pretty well in that agenda title. This item is essentially the part two with regard to funding our CAMPO's annual work program. With the exception of the annual funding amount, the funding agreement within the exhibit is a save as from fiscal year 21. This is the standard NDOT boilerplate for these funding agreements. Again, I'll note with the fiscal information that the agreement is to fund work elements 1 through 4 only from July 1 through June 30th, 2022, and commits the CAMPO partner jurisdictions to a 5% local match. That's shown in the 7th column of the table on packet page 88. And that local match totals $19,668 once we reconcile for FY21 carry forward. Should a supplemental federal funding agreement come forward in either May or June, it would also require a 5% local match for work element 5.0, and those are shown in the 2 columns on the right of the table. With that, I am happy to answer any questions. I will close by noting that development of this work program and this monetary agreement and the supplemental funding, it's taken a lot of time behind the scenes with NDOT staff who've been really creative partners with trying to support CAMPO and all the requirements that we have with very few staff. So it seems a little complicated, and that's because we're being creative. It's anticipated that next year we'll kind of clean all this up and hopefully roll it into a single monetary agreement. But this is what we have this year, and we're thrilled to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions or comments on this item? Mr. Bagwell.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm clear in the motion and where we're going. So, because I don't really want to see the item come back unless I'm misunderstanding this. Because we adopted the prior action, are you asking permission for the last column in the spreadsheet is through work element number 5, and then it would not come back to us because that would be greater than a 10%. I'm just trying to make sure that we get you a motion that aligns with what we just approved in the prior action. So I want to give you authority to negotiate with DOT through work element number 5 as presented, if that makes sense.
I appreciate the question. I don't believe that I can get away from coming back because there will be a supplemental funding agreement. I think we would just need to approve that agreement. The flexibility that's noted in the proposed motion has to do with the nature of the federal bill for transportation funding. The federal year starts October 1, and it's always kind of an approximate anticipated funding amount. So NDOT does their best to give us the amounts we expect. We use what's called pre-award authority to give us authorization back to July 1, but it's always kind of nebulous until October 1, and even right now there's no federal bill. And so that's what the flexibility is to built in. Is if we get a little bit more, we've never gotten less, but sometimes it's a little bit more. That was the intent behind that. I do anticipate coming back to you for a separate monetary agreement for work element 5 in May or June.
So this attachment does not cover work element 5. The spreadsheet of the column is just to tell you what you will be negotiating to try to bring back to us for work element 5.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we good? All right, so if there are no more questions or comments, I'd like to call for the motion.
Okay. I move to authorize the transportation manager to sign the agreement as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to sign future amendments to the agreement that extend the time for performance or modify the CPG funding and local match amounts within 10% of the present estimates in the agreement.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Lucia. And now we are on to item 6A, Transportation Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a new item on the CAMPO agenda. You may have noticed the new template. Adam Tully with the District Attorney's Office, he helped me go through, and we've updated the agenda to reflect the Carson City Board of Supervisors and really standardize them better. So you'll get a little bit of an opportunity for me to come and ramble at the very end for you. This is also an opportunity to provide board comments, or this can be a discussion item. Staff are working hard. Again, next month or June, we'll bring back that supplemental funding agreement. That supplemental funding agreement is anticipated to be Service Transportation Block Grant funding, which is required to be put into our TIP, our Transportation Improvement Program. So Dirk Goring put out a TIP amendment that's also running right now, so approval of that amendment would come forward as well. We're also looking at reclassification of Appian Way into a regional roadway, which will come to CAMPO for approval in May as well. So happy to answer any other questions.
No? Okay, then on to 6B, other comments and reports. I'm assuming that's, is that from you also, the 6B items? Because these are kind of new, aren't they? Yeah?
I don't have anything to add here. As I understand, we don't have to call them out individually. It's just an opportunity if anyone has anything else.
Gotcha. All right, then I will move on to item 7, public comment. Do we have any public comment toward the end of the meeting here?
There's one caller on the line. Caller, when you hear the 2 beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Hello?
Hello.
This is John Terry. I could not get logged in, and I am listening by phone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, do you hear us?
The login didn't work. Yes. I could not get the login to work to get into the meeting.
Okay. Wonder what we do at that point. I think we're okay. And we still had a quorum even though you weren't actually on the WebEx. So I think we're okay, but I appreciate you calling in.
Just under
I'll
public.
just continue to listen in then. Thank you.
Okay. Did you have a
I'll just under public comment to let everyone know, starting next month, all of our public meetings will be open to the public. So maybe we won't have any technical issues in the future. So I look forward to having open public meetings.
beautiful? Hey, John, real quick, is this is your last meeting, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your participation and your effort in participating in CAMPO, and wish you the best of luck in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Next meeting, I don't see it on here.
Because we don't do it that way anymore.
Oh, we don't? Oh, okay. Well, then, at that point, I guess I'll call for item number 8. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. We will be back at what time for RTC?
5 minutes till.
All right.
5.
At that point, we are adjourned.
Job. call the Regional Transportation Commission meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Present.
Vice Chair Schutte. Here. Member McQuarrie. Here. Member Stedfield. Here. Member Terry, are you on the line?
Is he unmuted on the phone?
Yes, he is. Unmuted.
Mr. Terry, can you hear us?
Well, if we think he's on the line, a quorum's present.
We'll try and, on every vote, we'll ask you manually for your vote. Thank you. Do I have any other public comment on the line?
No other public comment at this time, and I had the boardroom muted. My apologies.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Terry.
Hello?
There you go. We'll mark him present, please. Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes of March 10th. Do I have any corrections needed? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of the March 10th, 2021 RTC meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second for the approval of the March 10th, 2021 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Hi.
Please record Mr. Terry as an aye. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 5A, which is presentation and discussion on our pavement preservation. It's a good presentation coming our way, too. Mr. Martinovich, is that you?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Engineer for the record. Wanted to just kind of give a high-level update on some of our transportation projects, as well as our District 3 pavement preservation projects here this evening. So I'll talk about, first I'm going to talk about a little bit, switch the order a little bit. I'm going to talk about Long Street first, and then I'll go into Performance District 3 projects, and then East 5th Street, and then Center Drive. The map here kind of shows the project locations. District 2 includes Long Street. That was a previous year's project. The other projects I'll be discussing today, including 5th Street, Center Drive, Deer Run Road, and Old Clear Creek Road, are all in Performance District 3, which is our year 2021 Performance District. So first off, I want to touch back and go back to Long Street, which was District 2, which was year 2020 Performance District. So the Long Street project was originally identified as a pavement preservation, pavement reconstruction project. But when we started scoping and we started talking with our utility divisions, it was identified that there were other water and there were other sewer and there were other stormwater needs. And so the project scope really expanded from just the roadway reconstruction to a full kind of utility reconstruction and roadway reconstruction, as well as some storm drainage improvements as well. So it blossomed, and we've got a lot of moving parts to this particular project. In general, the scope is to replace water and sewer lines in between Roop Street and Solomon, along with some storm drainage improvements along Rand and Camille, and all the way running down to William Street. There's also the pavement reconstruction component, as I mentioned. The original intent of the project is still in there, and miscellaneous curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements, including the construction of a median island at State Street, which I'll show on the next slide in a moment. Well, actually, there it is, but I'll go back for a second. The funding for the project comes from a variety of sources. There's Regional Transportation Commission funds, there's V&T infrastructure funds, there's water utility funds, wastewater funds, storm drainage funds. There's a variety of funding, all totaling approximately $2.2 million. Costs there are shown, again, just kind of the breakdown of the costs for a total project, again, very similar to that $2.2 million. The project has been under design for a while. Again, with all those utilities, it's a little bit complex to make sure we don't have any conflicts underground and we're having water lines running into sewer lines and things like that. But we've reached 90%, and we're completing the 100% design right now. We're planning to have that design completed probably by the end of April, a week or two from now. We'll bid the project soon thereafter and award in June. The anticipated plan is to have the project under construction near the end of June, early July for completion this summer.
Can I ask you a question on this one? I see on the cost center, the storm drain, 400,000. Was this one of the original identified projects, or did this one come up later because we were out here and found and discovered that we needed to do it? Sorry, I should
I
have
will
put that
default
out
to the
earlier, but it
Deputy
just,
Public Works Director.
yeah, it just hit me.
Yeah, Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So the portion of storm drain that we added in was on our CIP list for stormwater for a long time. It's along Rand over there
Okay.
north of William. And so it was added to the project, and again, just to put everything together, cut once and get it all done at the same time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just looking to see if it was on the original list that we worked in our storm drain project.
Yes, it
So
was.
it was.
Yep.
Good, good. Thank you very much. Oh, don't go away. Uh-oh. Yes. I leave mine on for a reason. There you
Okay,
go.
there we go. So 900,000 for water. What are we putting in? Are we replacing an existing line, upsizing a line, or what?
It's replacing an existing line. I think it's like about 1,000 feet of 12-inch, and it's an old steel built in like, I don't know, 50s or 60s. And so it's ready to be replaced, end of useful life, and it made sense to do with this project.
Okay, right. Makes sense.
I'll note on the utilities as well that with that slope in the middle of Long Street, the utilities are relatively deep, and there's some additional costs associated with getting those utilities through that section. So I'll move back to some of the roadway features. This is one of the concepts we're looking at for installing at the intersection of Long Street and State Street. And so we're looking at installing a couple of median islands to do two things. First thing is in 2017, there was a pedestrian fatality at this crosswalk. And so there was some additional striping that was added out there to increase visibility and pull the parking back away from the intersection. So this kind of formalizes some of that infrastructure out there by providing additional visibility and slowing some of the traffic down at this intersection. So by moving the cars out closer to the edge of the road, pedestrians to the vehicles will be more visible. You'll be closer to seeing those pedestrians on the edges of the road. So this is one of the concepts we're looking at installing on Long Street at this particular intersection. So I just wanted to highlight that as a feature of the project. So with that, I'm going to move on to our Performance District 3 projects. So originally, back in September of 2020, we came forward to the RTC and presented a number of projects here listed on the screen. These were projects that we identified as potential Performance District 3 projects, and we moved forward with into scoping and initial phases of the design. They included Deer Run Road, Clear Creek, North Lampa Lane, Snyder Avenue, and those were pavement preservation projects. And the last project there, which was a full reconstruction of East 5th Street, which basically means you're removing the pavement and replacing with new pavement as opposed to putting a surface treatment on the top and then just restriping. So, oops, too far there. So our two projects we moved forward with included the Deer Run Road project and the Old Clear Creek Road project. And so the Deer Run Road project is a pavement preservation project between US 50 and Sedge Road. That's a total length of approximately 2.6 miles. We budgeted $250,000 for that and is scheduled to be bid here any day now and for construction this summer. Similarly, another pavement preservation project is the Old Clear Creek Road project, and this runs from US 395 to Vista Grande Boulevard and includes that short section of Vista Grande Boulevard right there from where it ties in with Old Clear Creek Road up to the Douglas County line, which is just a couple of hundred feet. We figured while we're there, let's treat that and have that preserved as well. So that total project length is 2,450 feet. Total budget for $148,000, and again, they're on similar schedule to Deer Run Road. We anticipate bidding any day now and having construction this summer. These are Type 3 modified slurry seal projects, which just Type 3 modified refers to the aggregate size that we're putting in our slurry seal. The other two projects we identified as pavement preservation are the North Lampa Lane, or were the North Lampa Lane and Snyder Avenue projects. When we went out and we kind of looked at North Lampa Lane for some original scoping, we determined that there's enough pavement deterioration and other needs specific to North Lampa Lane that a surface treatment type project wasn't appropriate at that time. And then the project needed for North Lampa Lane was a much bigger project in scale than we had the available budget for at the time. On Snyder Avenue, when we scoped that project out, we identified that NDOT had actually, just prior to relinquishing and turning the road back over to Carson City, they had just done a surface treatment on that. So there was really no need at this time for us to do a surface treatment on Snyder Avenue. So those two projects, for those reasons, were removed from the Performance District projects for this year. The other project that we had was identified was the District 3 East 5th Street project. And so this was our reconstruction project. And the project right now, as it's currently scoped, is a reconstruction rehabilitation project beginning and including the intersection of Fairview Drive and East 5th Street, the roundabout at that location, and runs down to the east end of the road at Marsh Road. And there's different components with that, and I'll show a map in a second of some of those different components. But this project is a federally funded project using Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG funding, in the amount that was awarded through CAMPO and a call to projects earlier this year, for those of you who recall that, in January and February. The general scope of the project is to includes the roundabout expansion at Fairview and East 5th Street, which would include additional northbound and southbound lanes and an additional westbound turn lane on 5th Street. It also includes reconstruction of the pavement between Park Hill Drive and Carson River Road in the westbound direction only, and that accommodates the water line improvements, which I'll talk about quickly in a second. The project includes surface treatment between Fairview Drive and Marsh Road, with the exception of that one westbound direction between Park Hill and Carson River Road. It includes some limited curb and gutter emplacement near the school. It includes pedestrian enhancements, again, near the school, and also a right turn lane at the intersection of East 5th Street and Eagle Valley Middle School at East 5th Street and Carson River Road to accommodate some of the student pickup and drop-off planned for Eagle Valley Middle School. Lastly, there is water line replacement with this project as well. Like Long Street, when we start scoping some of these projects, we identify additional needs, and the Water Utility Division identified a need to replace a water line on a portion of the project.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So 2/3 of the project budget is to expand the roundabout?
I
math
haven't
right?
quite gotten to the budget, but I think you're correct, Greg.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes, there it is. Yes, on the costs. You're correct. Approximately $2 million on the roundabout is the estimate.
Wow. What's driving that? I mean, do we have the traffic study that identifies that needs to be expanded?
There was a traffic study that was completed for Eagle Valley Middle School back in December, January, and I think that traffic study was presented or made a part of the materials at the Planning Commission, which I believe was January 27th, that last Wednesday of January. So there was a study, and as part of that study, they analyzed, I want to say, 6 or 7 different alternatives for potential roundabout improvements. And the alternative that added additional lanes in the northbound and southbound directions was the one that made the roundabout meet the level of service requirements under the city's current policy.
And we brought the item before, we did a grant through CAMPO to be able to fund that. So we've also seen that a few months ago. I don't know where the time goes, but we had that before all of us, where we voted to apply for that grant and to add this to the project. Just can't remember the month, but we did.
I want to say it was January, but
Second meeting in January, yeah. Okay, thank you.
yeah. So I'll stick with funding, Greg, if you're good. Okay. Sticking with funding, right? So we have 2.366 million. That was the amount that CAMPO awarded the Regional Transportation Commission for this project. We have additional regional transportation and V&T infrastructure funds planned, as well as water utility funding as shown there. So the current project budget is 3.005 million, and that's our estimate right now. We haven't really started on design yet, as we have to complete an LPA agreement with NDOT for that grant funding. So that's what we're working on right now. We anticipate that at some point this summer, that LPA agreement will be executed, and we'll begin design following that. This project will be constructed in a couple of different phases. We plan to construct the right turn lane at Carson River Road. That's the eastbound right turn lane eastbound right turn lane on 5th Street to southbound Carson River Road. We plan to construct that summer of 2022 to coincide with the expansion of the Eagle Valley Middle School. The following summer is when we anticipate to do the roundabout reconstruction. And And that's just due to the complexity of the roundabout reconstruction and the time it's going to take to design the roundabout properly and correctly and make sure we've done our diligence on getting the research completed and the design as good as it can be. So I'll just kind of mention here, here's a conceptual design for the roundabout. This is what shows 2 lanes in the northbound and 2 lanes in the southbound direction. It leaves the single lane in the eastbound direction of 5th Street. The map, I don't know what my north arrow got covered by the picture, apologize for that. And then it also includes the westbound turn lane on 5th Street, right here, if you can see that. So that's just a turn pocket for the roundabout. So it's not a full roundabout reconstruction, it's just a roundabout expansion to accommodate those additional lanes in the northbound and southbound directions.
Sorry, got another question. So,
Yes.
So looking at Fairview, north and south of that, where do those additional lanes start and die?
At this point, they're going to start and die a couple of thousand feet prior to or after the roundabout. So they're not right now going to connect to anything. Should Fairview ever be widened, then that would be done. But at this point, it's just primarily at the area of the roundabout.
I have a question too, Chris, on this one. I'm sure it'll take care of this in the design, but if you're in the curb lane, it's really very hard to go round the roundabout to turn left, right? And so adequate signage is pretty important for that, because I find the roundabout at Stewart Street a little confusing there, because if you are in the wrong lane, I mean, if you use it on a regular basis, it's no problem, but if for someone who's not used to it and they're in the right-hand lane, all of a sudden they find themselves shooting up Stewart Street instead of Carson Street, because they don't have a choice at that point, and then they've got to figure out what to do. So just good signage up front, I think, will.
Yeah, definitely. There will be, this map doesn't show it, but there will be advanced signing. We'll put the arrows, I think they call them fish hook arrows, on the pavement in advance of the roundabout to indicate which lanes, those lane control arrows will be placed out there, so.
Well, ASCE has some webinars on roundabout signage that are probably worth watching.
Okay,
It's an art.
it is an art. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
So this is kind of the map of the project improvements. On the left side of the map is the roundabout expansion. The pavement, the surface treatment to the pavement preservation there is shown in green. That occurs in the eastbound direction between Carson River Road and Park Hill. And in the westbound direction, that's the area where we'll do the reconstruction and we'll do the water line removal and replacement in that segment of the road. Most of the pedestrian improvements will happen right in front of Eagle Valley Middle School. And then you can see that little right turn arrow sign, that's the location of the right turn lane from 5th Street down to Carson River Road. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of a project. So when we originally scoped this project, as part of the Performance District 3 concept, it was really a pavement rehabilitation primarily from and not including the roundabout. It really started at Fairview, just to the east of Fairview, and extended as a pavement preservation to Marsh Road. Again, as we talked about scoping, we included the water line. Subsequently, there's other improvements have been identified, and so when we went out and we walked the project, we identified a number of things such as deteriorating curb and gutter. We identified additional ADA improvements that were needed. At this meeting, or at this board, we identified a need for a potential path. I think, Chaz, you mentioned that. Between the new paths that were just constructed on Carson River Road down to Fairview to tie into that existing paved path. So there were a lot of needs, and so we had kind of identified those and we scoped them out and we came up with a cost estimate. And ultimately, we didn't have the funding available for that particular scope of the project. So we kind of scaled back, and we're very good here at Carson City at value engineering and looking for ways to get the most and get the best bang for our buck. So we scaled back to a different version. So we looked at, okay, if the roundabout comes in, what do we do with a little bit less money? Maybe we pull back some of the ADA improvements, 'cause since we're doing a surface treatment, those aren't as required. Maybe we pull back some of the curb and gutter enhancements. We can just do the surface treatment, make sure the pavement's good, but we're not gonna quite focus on all the pedestrian, all the curb gutter and deficiencies that we've identified. But what we'll try to do is get as much as we can. So that's that second column there is kind of that middle range. And then ultimately, we decided, we still don't have the additional funding to do that at this time. So what can we get and get the most out of this for the funding we do have? And so that's where the project currently landed, is that column 1 there, that's our current project scope with the available funding that we have at this point. And so it calls for that roundabout expansion at approximately $2 million, pavement rehabilitation, which includes those items there presented on the screen, the right turn lane, as mentioned, at Carson River Road, and then the water line replacement in that short segment. And then kind of going backward from the way I just described, if you wanted to do additional pavement rehabilitation, if we wanted to do additional pedestrian or curb gutter enhancements, that's kind of the breakdown of and the evolution of a project. So we always try to scope and identify what we need, and then we come back and say, this is really what we have, so this is the best we can get at this point for the funding we have available. So that's the thing, and that's the kind of the project scope here. And so these are some of the maps for those different concepts. This was concept 2, where we would do pavement rehabilitation and the water line between Hills Bells or Carson River Road and Park Hill. So instead of doing just the westbound direction, we do the eastbound and the westbound direction, which is really what it needs and what's an identified deficiency out there. Similarly, for concept number 3, this would include kind of all the identified scope elements, the pavement reconstruction between Carson River Road and Park Hill, as well as the additional pedestrian improvements and the path between Fairview Drive and Carson River Road. So those are kind of the 3 visually from the column I just described.
So okay, never mind. The next slide does it. Are you telling me to accomplish the last slide that you had instead of a $3,005,000 project to do what you really scoped in that area, to just go once, get it all done, and then you won't revisit that area?
Yeah,
it would move it off the list of items to do, would be $3,495,000?
That is the original project as we scoped, which would include the pavement reconstruction in front of the middle school, both directions, and some additional pedestrian, ADA, and curb and gutter replacements, as well as the path. That's the estimate, correct.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to our last project I'll update on is the District 3.
Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, yes.
So just to reiterate what Laurie said, so the project is, number 1, $3 million and 5,000. And so right now, we're not planning to do either the additional pavement reconstruction or the pedestrian enhancement.
That's
Is that
correct.
what I'm hearing?
We have not included those in the current scope of the project.
Carson City has a complete street ordinance. Is it an ordinance? Well,
No.
policy anyway, if it's not an ordinance. And it really appears like what we're cutting out are the pedestrian side of this, which certainly when you're right next to a school does have safety implications. I recently started pushing my grandchild around in a stroller, and it really makes you understand what ADA is all about, because when you try and get off a ramp or onto a ramp where that is not ADA, you realize how tenuous it can be. So I would just advocate that if there's any way that the city can see its way to constructing, if not all, part of these additional facilities, I would encourage you to do that. And potentially you bid them as an additive alternates, right? Because who knows, you may just hit lucky on the bids and you got an extra $300,000, right? Which is how we got all the trails by Prison Hill built and the ones by the river. I mean, we had A, B, and C basically, and we were able to get all 3 of them. So I would encourage you to structure it that way so that if the opportunity arises, we can get them built.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's kind of the reason why I was asking about the roundabout, because it seems like an awful lot of money, and I'd really be curious, is the AM peak or the PM peak, is it a very narrow amount of time during the day when there's a level of service issue? I know it's not all the time because I drive through there all the time because I live over there. So, are we throwing a bunch of money at a very narrow time space of impact out there? I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
mean, there-
Part of the discussion that we had deals with more than just a specific traffic time. If you can recall, that has a single point of entrance and exit, so there was emergency considerations for that whole neighborhood with the expansion of the school. So I think there was a lot of complexities to this particular issue. So I don't think it's any one item, but also that with that school expansion, the level of service did not meet the required D, right? I know it sounds terrible to say in school, we're letting a road be a D, but it scored worse, and therefore the mitigations had to occur. But it was also all of the residents in that area overly concerned that adding another 200 or 300 students when you only have a single point of access, it wasn't the right answer. And so the roundabout was a piece of expansion for exits into that arena. So I think there's lots of issues in this particular project, but I also agree with Jazz. And really, we can potentially talk on item 5B when we get there and discuss dollars and opportunities for what we want to work on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep going.
I will move on to District 3 Center Drive Reconstruction Project. So this project is a pavement rehabilitation reconstruction of Center Drive between Snyder Avenue and Clear Creek Road. This project is one we are actually looking for getting consultant support on, and so we're negotiating a contract with a consultant, and we plan to bring that potentially to the May meeting next month. It includes full-depth reconstruction of Clear Creek Road, the construction of curb gutter and sidewalk along the east side of Clear Creek Road. It includes widening slightly of Clear Creek Road to accommodate a bike lane in both directions, since it's a designated bike path in that location. It includes some channel maintenance on the west side of the road. There's an existing channel there to convey flows, as well as the installation of sanitary sewer between Clear Creek and Snyder. There is currently no sanitary sewer in Clear Creek at this time. So again, another one of those projects where through scoping, we've identified additional utility needs, and so we'll take care of that at one time. Project funding for this, regional transportation funds and wastewater utility funds for a total of $727,000. Again, we're looking at schedule-wise consultant here in May. They'll design through the summer and complete design by the end of the year, and we'll construct this spring, summer of 2022. So similarly, as East Fifth Street project, we originally looked at doing this as a little bit larger project, running it down to the county line, which is an additional 1,350 feet. We wouldn't be putting curb and gutter along that, but we'd reconstruct the pavement and potentially do some widening to bring it up to our current standards. Whereas the current project just is about 1,200 feet long, as I mentioned previously with the scope. So visually, our current project there is on the left side of the screen. The potential alternative, as we originally kind of scoped it out, was run it down to the Douglas County line, that additional 1,350 feet. Project cost for those two, our current project, as shown previously, was $727,000, and then the continuation of that reconstruction of the pavement down to the county would be $990,000. So those are the projects related to the District 3, and then kind of a summary of Long Street, which is a former District 2. Other than that, I'm happy to answer and take any more questions, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Terry, you're on the line. Do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I know you're on the phone, that I don't leave you out. Do I have any further questions on this item? Chaz?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thanks. On the Deer Run Road project, I'm trying to remember, are they 12-foot lanes striped out there right now to the fog line with a little skinny sort of, not a bike lane?
I believe they are 12 feet lanes.
Can the city look at striping them as 11-foot lanes with just a tinge more on the outside the fog line? Just people speed there and people ride bikes there quite a lot, and just it doesn't really change the dynamics of the road other than making people slow down just a little bit and giving just a little bit more protection for bicyclists.
I will check with the project manager as to see where the project is as far as if design has been let out to bid. I don't know if it has, and I'll see what we can do, Jazz.
Yeah.
I will note that we are adding some additional guideposts along the sides of the road to define some of the curves out there a little bit better. I think some additional visual obstructions do help with conveying that, there's a curve coming and speeds may slow as a result of that. But there are some other components associated with the project that beyond just restriping and resealing and restriping.
Right, but most of the length is not curved, right? I mean, most of the Deer Run Road length is not.
There are a couple of sharper curves out there, but yes, I mean, there's a lot of straight sections.
No, curbed. It's not
Curbed. No,
as
yeah,
in-
okay.
Right, I mean, it's just striping.
Yes, it's just
No
striping.
more striping or less striping, it's just putting it in a different place. It's
Yes.
moving it over a foot, so
My apologies,
if you
yes.
could look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have no further questions? Thank you. We'll move on then to agenda item 5B that discusses the recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for the fiscal '22 budgets for the Regional Transportation, Transit, Campo, and Street Maintenance. Are you going to take us through that, Lucia, or start us off?
I'll kick this off. Thank you, Madam Chair. Lucia Maloney, Transportation Manager. This item is to discuss the draft fiscal year '22 budgets for the Regional Transportation, Transit, Campo, and Street Maintenance funds. The draft budgets are going to the Board of Supervisors at their meeting tomorrow. So as is customary, we bring the draft budgets to RTC to consider the budgets, have some more detailed technical discussions. If there's any comments, any concerns, Sherry Russell, the city CFO, is also on the WebEx and available to answer questions. Myself, I'll present at a very high level the Regional Transportation, Transit, and Campo funds. And then Rick Cooley, our operations manager, is here, and he'll kind of walk you through the Streets Maintenance Fund as well. If you have any questions as we go, I think we can take them one at a time, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair, and go into as detailed as you'd like.
Yep, it's fine.
The Exhibit 1 contains the budget prep worksheets for all of these funds. Looking at packet page number 25 is where they start. Starting with the Regional Transportation Fund, supplemental or late material was provided just before this meeting. Thank you for your patience. Hard copies were provided here today for the board. They've also been posted on our website as late material. For the most part, the Regional Transportation Fund budget is very similar to previous years. With the COVID-19 pandemic, fuel tax revenues have unfortunately continued to be down. The revenues projected at the top of the revised late material for the 250 fund budget, those are based on fiscal year 20 actuals and then fiscal year 21 projections to date. And those came from the finance department if you have additional questions on the details for the county option fuel tax. But that's the primary funding for this fund. If you go down to the following page, which is packet page 26, the revised page on the late material, right there in the middle of the page are our main expense accounts for this fund. Just drawing your attention to a couple of line items. Freeway landscaping maintenance is the third one, the 500428. That one has gone up slightly just over time. That expense account, maintaining that freeway and that right-of-way landscaping, just continues to kind of creep up. So I draw your attention to that one. And then going down near the bottom of packet page 26 revised, you'll see the 507 accounts in the object, and those are the capital accounts. Next year, we anticipate approximately 1.7 million, which will be available for transportation capital projects when you combine the 1.45 in capital improvements and the infrastructure capital, which is showing 279,000 and change. Right now, we've planned $100,000 for safety improvements. We draw this out into an annual capital project, and this allows us to do critical safety improvements, including rapid rectangular flashing beacons, new crosswalk signage, things like that. We're doing a barrier rail project on Northridge Drive, so those types of improvements. It's also our last year of a $50,000 per year repayment for the Maverick signal over on College, so that'll drop off after this year. And then the remaining is primarily, those District 4 payment management plan implementation projects. So once the budget's approved, we'll bring those back for you, hopefully right in July, to approve that portfolio of projects for this coming fiscal year. Moving down to the bottom of that page, the 250-3040, all those accounts relate to Safe Routes to School and our Safe Routes to School program. The numbers that are in this draft budget are carry forward placeholder numbers based on remaining funding in our existing funding agreement. For those that have been on the board a while, you'll recall we applied for a Transportation Alternatives Program, a TAP grant, to continue that program into the future. Staff do anticipate an executed agreement, a new funding agreement for July 1st moving forward. But until we have that agreement, we can't get those grant funds in here. So you can anticipate that being adjusted probably in first round augmentations in FY22. So those are the high level comments on the Regional Transportation Fund. I'm happy to answer any specific questions now before we move on.
Does any member have a question? Mr. Terry, do you have any questions? Okay, so I do, and I want to, oh, sorry, Mr. Terry, did you have a question?
No, I'm now,
Oh, you're in the WebEx now.
I now have video, and no, I do not have any questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Glad you could join us on the WebEx part. So going back to the earlier discussion on 5A, if I were to look at the projects for Transportation District 3, how much money would I need to be able to complete them to the true scoping and go there once? Because I kind of do agree that it's better to go once, get it done. So maybe what I'm looking for is just discussion here, unless my math is not quite so good, but about 725,000, and we could meet both projects to their fully intended scopes. And so I just ask all of you, is that something we want to bring forward to the Board of Supervisors to look at potential additional funding that might become available? Because I hate to do the recommendation as stated here if we really want to add the 725,000 to this budget. And so I'm kind of looking for your feel on whether we should request the projects in their entirety. Ms. Schutte?
I think absolutely, for a couple reasons. I think the dig once is really appropriate, and we need to do it right, and we save money in the long term. And also, building on what Chaz was saying, the complete streets. I think we have made such progress in this community with complete streets, and I think it's important to be consistent. So I support.
Okay. Do I have any other comment in that? Or is everybody in the same? I think Chaz already made that comment, but just looking overall, so before I take any motions on this, that we're coming to consensus of process.
So where would that extra $700,000 come from?
Well, that's for some other types on this board to work on. The objective really is for this committee to determine what is the best projects. And sometimes it doesn't mean that the Board of Supervisors is going to find the money, but if we're not presenting them with options, what I don't want to do is say we recommended the budget and then we really want 700,000 that might be available to do the projects to their extent. So I would rather recommend the budget plus 725,000 if available, and we can say it if available.
Right. So, but my concern would be, are they going to rob Peter to pay Paul? Is it going to come from some other budget to cover that?
No. No, that's not my intent.
No, I'm not your intent, but I
Yes.
mean, it's got to come from somewhere. It's not like we're the federal government. We can just print money.
You're absolutely correct.
Sherry, the CFO, I wish.
Yeah, Sherry's tying in now. So there'll be
Yeah, I just wanted
opportunities.
to-
Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
I just wanted to mention this is the tentative budget that we're presenting, so as well as tomorrow. So any recommendations, as well as tomorrow, would go to the board and would be incorporated into the final budget. So we never rob Peter to pay Paul. Somehow we'd find the funding for that.
Thank you, Sherry.
Madam
welcome.
Chair, I'm sorry.
Jogathon. I like it.
Go for it.
Ms. Maloney?
I I'd like to clarify, I apologize, I think I misspoke earlier with the 725. When I summed across the sheets, it looks like it comes out to 753. Is that correct,
Oh, that's the
Chris?
math I had, or I just happened to mention, I thought I had bad math because I got 753, but I thought, so 753?
I apologize.
753 is the number I've calculated, yes.
Good, I thought I had wacky math, so I'll correct my statement and go back to good math. Thank you. So, okay,
Well,
so
you probably do
we're.
have wacky math. You just got lucky.
Shh, don't tell anyone. Okay, so that's in the Regional Transportation Fund that we would need to consider to be able to handle that project. Can we talk about the Transit Fund now, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. So this starts on packet page 29. So moving on to the Transit Fund, which is the 225 fund. Up at the top, you'll see the revenues, just like you always do. We've listed out the federal grants, the FTA grants that are active right now that we're drawing from. What's not in here is funding that we recently found out about from the American Rescue Plan. We received a direct apportionment in the amount of about $425,000. An additional approximately $25,000 will come to CAMPO, and that's being run through CAMPO's call for projects currently. So in total, about $450,000. So that'll be added later once it's received in an augmentation, and that's available at 100% federal share. So that revenue's at the top. About the middle of that page, of packet page 29, I did want to point out, you'll see the 443310, which is Jack Ticket. We generally put our fare box revenues in the budget in a single line item, and then when they come in, they get spread out. Jack has been free fare due to the pandemic since March of 2020. We do anticipate turning those fares on at some point in the very near future as we recover, and we'll have that discussion here at RTC. But we have projected slightly lower fare box revenues than the 21 revised budget because of the uncertainty there. Going down to the bottom third of that page, you see the 481013, that CCFTA 5307 ops match. That is the annual general fund transfer that supports generally the local match to continue operations of transit. And that this past year was $466,300. Going on to the next page, you get to that block of the main expense accounts that we use. I'll draw your attention to the second one, the operating contract. RTC approved about a year ago now a new contract. We changed contract operators. We use First Transit as the company now. And as part of that new contract, and just as the way of things, the costs went up, even though we didn't get, any additional service. So that money is budgeted there, about $1 million a year for operations. I'll also draw your attention to vehicle fuel and oil, right about the middle of that packet, page 30. We do see fuel prices continue to increase, so we've budgeted and estimated accordingly the best we could in that line item. And then down at the bottom, those 507 accounts, again, those are the capital accounts. You'll see undesignated projects. It's pretty, you may think it's odd that transit has undesignated projects, but those are those FTA, the existing grants that come as apportionments that are in there where we either don't have local match yet to support expenditure of those grants, or it's CARES where it's 100%, but we just, due to limited staff resources, we don't know how far we'll get with that grant in this fiscal year. So that money's there. Vehicle replacement program. We have our transit asset management plan that you have all seen before. This year, we've planned for a replacement of our Jack Ford Explorer, which is very old and no longer really meets operational needs. We're looking to replace it with a pickup that can better transport detour signs, help us out when we need to go out with chains, those type of things. And then the expansion of fleet by 2 vehicles to better serve the continued increase in demand on our paratransit service. And then finally at the bottom there's $200,000 for equipment. That is 100% federal share CARES grant where we've planned for some bus stop amenity improvements, shelters, lighting, that type of thing. So with that, I'll answer any questions on the transit fund.
Okay, on the transit fund, I'd like to, and I think my partner to the right said, where are you going to get some of the money? So I have an idea. Where I'm looking is at the transfer for the operating match with all, where we have 466,300. I wonder if because of all the CARES Act dollars and things that are coming in, that we can spend at 100% dollars. Do I have an opportunity to not do the transfer? That we could eliminate and align this so that we have an opportunity to put those dollars to another purpose? So I just ask whether we can eliminate that 466,300 this one year. Or this year, it doesn't matter which year,
I
but that,
appreciate the comment. So we
Right.
did have, I will say we underspent our general fund transit this fiscal year because of the use of those 100% share grants. It's important that we continue to have, I think, some local match available. We want to be strategic about our draws to some of those older grants that require a match, so that we keep them active. So maybe a smaller, I think, nominal amount, if you were looking at reducing it, would be really helpful to make sure we can continue to make, like, 1 or 2 draws a year on those grants. But I think if that was an area you wanted to go, we could make it work.
okay, so we could make a recommendation to staff to articulate how much you want to change FY21 in an de-augment some, don't transfer it all, or a combination of 22. And I don't have any particular care of how much comes out of fiscal year 21 or how much comes out of fiscal year 22. I'm perfectly fine with Sherry and staff kind of mapping that out. But I think that's an opportunity to have the dollars that we have available doing the best we can each and every year, working every penny. So I don't have to do a jogathon. Okay.
Well, here's a question for you. Some of those dollars, could those be used for maintenance? Because we're always struggling for maintenance dollars, aren't we?
Maintenance of,
Or like short line or,
Well,
just something
that's
that-
another discussion in the next budget. So we'll talk about that. I think now the short line's in the next budget. So,
All right.
so our recommendation again is to potentially remove 466,300 in any combination between 21 and 22. I'll leave that. Again, staff can determine which is the most appropriate methodology there. Okay. And nope, sorry, the next one on the list says Campo. Then you, sorry. I go in order. I can't help myself. So the Campo budget, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Packet page 32 has the CAMPO budget. It's very short. At the top, you see the revenues. For the 2022 department budget column on the right, the revenues match the full Unified Planning Work Program that was approved at CAMPO earlier this evening. Should the supplemental federal funding agreement not come through for that extra $100,000, this would be adjusted. We've pulled for expenses, all of CAMPO's expenses out of that 501-210 CAMPO grants expense account because we have that approved work program. So that gives us, that's why it all comes out of there. Happy to answer any questions.
Have any questions on Campo? Mr. Terry? No? Okay. Street maintenance funds, please.
All right, for the record, Rick Cooley, Operations Manager for Public Works. Where are we starting here? The bottom of page 34 really won't get into. That's really our salaries and stuff that we don't have a whole lot of control over. One thing I will point out is we haven't spent a whole lot of overtime this year, and so we're holding that line item the same. It's primarily due to, real light winter, which was kind of nice to have finally. And some other factors, we didn't have a whole bunch of rains last year, so overtime's been a little light this year. Get down into our operating, we got pretty much hammered this year. And so you'll see that if you try to make sense of the years across, they're not gonna make any sense at all. We've gone through, tried to prioritize what we need, like long line, for example, typically we have $305,000 in there. We put in 120 this year just to cover the long line contract this year, because due to several factors, we had to rebid. There was a bunch of things going on, but a couple of years ago, we didn't do our long line. And we thought, yeah, we can skip a year, it'll work. Well, it really wiped out everything, all the buildup we had. And so we figured out that that's not going to happen again. So we put all of our eggs into that basket to make sure we can get that done this year. Some other things, our signal repair and maintenance, it's called radio maintenance in here, but our signal repair and maintenance, that's down 100,000. Our street repairs budget, which we're down to, as you see, about 9,000, just short of $9,000 now, which is virtually nothing. So we'll make do with what we have out of some of the other line items where it comes to our signage and striping and some of those, and make all those work to, get us through, but it's really not a good situation this year. One of the things you will see, Lucia alluded to it, fuel costs. Yeah, we're seeing landfill, all of our divisions, fuel prices came down quite a bit last year, at least the way we buy it in bulk. So we actually just recently looked at it. Our gallon usage is roughly the same. It's a little lighter, but it's roughly the same. It's just really those cost savings in prices. So that's going to go back up. So we're trying not to rob. We robbed a little bit out of there, but we don't want to rob too much because it's going to come back. If you flip over to page 36, couple items to note where it comes to our vehicle replacement program. We got $555,000 in there. It's 2 pickups, a snow plow, dump truck, half of a sweeper, and
Which half?
yeah, the working half.
Yeah, the working half.
So
Works, but it just sits there, right?
Another department pays for the other half, but or division pays for the other half. But those, it was asked when we were putting budgets together, can we push a sweeper off a year? Those things just get hammered. I mean, at any given day, I've got, if I'm lucky, I got 3 running, but any given day, I got 1 or 2 running. So those definitely need to be replaced when it comes due. And then a couple of lines down, we've got some equipment for $75,000 this year that we put in for. It's a stump grinder for us. It's a need with all of the cottonwoods and whatnot that we keep taking down. We got to pull those stumps out so we can rebuild curb gutter, sidewalk, and other issues we're having. It's not, our tree situation is getting worse, not better, as those things get older. So
Yeah, we've seen that on the report that we get every other month. It surprises me how many trees.
yeah, and
That we
it's.
do.
I mean, nobody wants to go out there and just start whacking trees, but at the same time, when we do it, we got to do it right and get everything out and get things replaced and get it fixed. So, other than that, those are just the items I wanted to highlight. I'm open for any questions, shots, whatever you guys got.
So I do want to talk about short line. So what do we have in here to handle short line?
We've got nothing.
That's what I
So
thought.
last year, what we did, so typically our long line budget is 305,000, and that every year keeps getting cut. So like I said, we got the bare minimum in there, get our long line done this year. Last year, we had good pricing and whatnot, came in around 200, so I had about an extra $100,000 in there. We thought we did short line on North Carson through downtown, Fairview, College. I'm missing one, but some of our major thoroughfares because those really needed it. We got great pricing. 3 bids came in. One was at just under 100,000. One was at 130,000. One was at 150,000. So I mean, we got lucky with pricing last year. We were able to squeak it in with the money we had to do those areas. But there is, depending on where you drive in town, you see it. It's pretty.
So it's for the public that might be listening, would you explain what a short line is? That's my
So
fault
short
too.
line is any pavement markings, and that's our crosswalks, our arrows, our any wide stripe wider than 6 inches, cross hatching through median areas. All that is short line. And the biggest thing is, and our stop bars. The biggest thing is our stop bars and our crosswalks and our yield, our alligator teeth, or shark's teeth. But those are, we can't get to them. And those are our safety issues. So that's really what's coming down to now is you prioritize what areas you need to be more safe than others. And it's not a good position to be in.
So the idea, and I just ask all of you to think this through with me again, was to look at not transferring 466,000 in any combination in the other transit fund, because we got lucky and got some funding from the federal government that can be spent at 100%. So we could then ask for those dollars to be put into this account so we can handle short line. I just hate to have no money for short line and it's just not safe. And so I think we, again, have a one-time funding opportunity that we could consider making this a priority to do the short line. So do you like that idea to add in for short line? Is there anything else you see, Chaz?
So Rick, does the city do some of the crosswalk striping itself, right? I see city crews out there.
Yes, we've got a two-man crew, and we've got a hand truck, which would be a short line hand truck. We don't do any long line. We've got a kettle to where we can do some patchwork, but no real long line stuff. So we do go out, and it's year-round, weather permitting, to do what we can. I mean, like come first part of July, we dedicate 100% of our efforts into school zones to sweeten and brighten those up before school starts. And then for the rest of the year, besides sign replacement, because people can't seem to drive on the roadway, we're continuously replacing signs. I mean, it's terrific if you actually look at the numbers. But the rest of their time is spent going around looking at these areas that, hey, we need to catch this area, we need to catch this area. I mean, we don't have a program because things are deteriorating at different rates throughout town. So it's really a crisis management is how that group works. And Justin hates us coming in the morning because usually myself or Darren or Dan is going to blow up his morning by saying, hey, we need you to go over here and take care of this area. And so those guys on any given day really don't know. They have a plan, but they don't have a plan because we're moving them all over the place to take care of different areas.
It keeps the job exciting.
Short line, that would be to hire a contractor.
It would be contracted out, yes.
Okay.
Somebody that can come in, like when we did it this year, we brought them in at night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we didn't want, especially on Carson Street, College, we didn't want that work being done during the day. It's just too disruptive. We can get more bang for our buck doing it at night. They're set up for it. They can staff up. They brought in, the group we had this last year actually brought in 2 crews on some nights, 3 crews on other nights to knock areas out to where they have a lot more flexibility and equipment that they can come and take care of that in short order.
You know, I agree with Laurie. I think it's a safety issue, and I think we need to address it the best we can. So.
Absolutely.
Mr. Terry, are you in the yes boat or any comment?
I'm on board with what you're saying. If it's a safety item, I think you got to find a higher priority for it and find budget for it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Then, does anyone else have any questions for any of the budgets? So I can summarize what our discussion is, and then I can accept a motion. So we're looking to not transfer the 466,000 of the general fund to the transit account. We're looking to, if funding is available, to add 753,000 to the RTC fund to complete the 2 projects as scoped, and add 466,000 thereabouts to the streets account to handle the short line. Did we miss any?
The one thing, and if we get those infrastructure funds from the federal government, that they go back into that, what fund was that again? The one that we're not doing sorry.
That's okay. I'm missing one. I'm like, what did I miss? I'm trying to do this for the minutes, so that Tamar can just grab this easy. So did I miss one?
Oh, yeah, so if we get the rescue plan dollars, that they go back into that 481013.
Oh, yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Shedfield. Once those grants get accepted, we'll put them through it during augmentations, if that's okay with you all.
I just wanted to.
That's an automatic when those funds come in. Sherry loves augmentations of grant dollars.
I just wanted to make sure it was in the record, that's all.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion to recommend as discussed on the record?
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the fiscal year 2022 budgets for the Regional Transportation transit, campo, and street maintenance funds with the additional recommendations as summarized by Madam Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. Thank you all for your good work and staff. We'll move on to item number 5C, which is discussion and possible action regarding proposed revisions to the Jack fixed routes. Are you great? I don't see it on here. Alex, sorry. Mr. Cruz, take us through this item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Alex Cruz, Transit Coordinator. So the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 put forth requirements for public transportation to provide equal access for persons with disabilities. Jump Around Carson started service in 2005 with ADA policies in place to ensure our compliance with the ADA. Staff periodically review these policies to ensure continued compliance with the ADA and to ensure customer satisfaction while riding Jack. During this latest review, Jack staff identified a few changes needed for both the ADA fixed route policy and the complementary paratransit service. The changes identified were mostly for clarity and readability, but some minor substantive changes were made. On packet page 52, a substantive addition was made to clarify our application policy. The language that was added was to mirror the ADA standards with regards to applicant notification and eligibility. Staff also made a substantive change on packet page 59 regarding subscription service. Staff limited subscription service to 20% of the daily Jack Assist availability to ensure availability for all riders. Staff made a clarification to the Jack Assist service area that extends from 3/4 of a mile to 1 mile from any fixed route by establishing the name of extended service area to be used in this document and all future references to that area in Jack policies and procedures. The extended service area is referenced on packet pages 55 and 72, and the map on packet page 70. With that, staff is available to take any questions, comments regarding the policies and the changes.
Does anyone have any questions? So I'll start then. Why are we extending the zone from 3/4 miles to 1 mile?
So this is not an actual change that we're making as far as the zone. This has always kind of been a CAMPO policy that we have that extended service area between 3/4 of a mile to 1 mile. It's just Carson City policy that the ADA requires 3/4 of a mile, and then we extended it to 1/4 from 3/4 of a mile to 1 mile. The only change that we're actually making is just the name of that service area to extended service area. It was referenced a couple different times in a couple different ways. It wasn't really a name for that area. Yeah.
So the rule is you have to do 3/4, and you're saying that our Jack service would consider people between the 3/4 and the 1 mile if we had availability?
The Carson City policy has been, since 2005, what we do is 3/4 of a mile is the ADA policy, and then that extra 1/4 mile is just our policy. What we do is anyone that is within that area can still get a ride. They actually, we double the price. Normal Jack Assist is $2. If somebody wants to ride within that extended area, they pay $4.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, then.
Understanding of that, Madam Chair, is the justification historically had to do with some of our residential areas being so far away from our fixed route, up on the hill on the west side, like up in the Timberline Lakeview area, and then up like Gonai, out on Deer Run where we don't do fixed route. A lot of those folks use our Jack Assist. So that was the rationale originally, to kind of push out that extended service area only in the Carson City portion. We don't have an extended service area in Douglas County, just to clarify.
Oh, thank you, because I was going to say, I thought we had this discussion when we were looking of expanding routes, because we get a lot of requests to expand a route out so that they can have service up into Douglas County, and that was one of our concerns if we did that. And so somehow in my mind, I had the 3/4 mile.
You're right. So if we
Okay.
extend, say, down to Walmart or down to
Right.
Target, the 3/4 mile Jack Assist would extend as well. But right now in policy, we don't have the extended service area down in Douglas County. It's only in the Carson City portion of our service.
So we're allowed pursuant to federal rule to define the extended area, and it doesn't have to be consistent for, so.
That's exactly right. They
Okay.
don't care. It's just kind of a good thing
got where
that
I'm
we
going.
do. And then the change in the policy, like Alex said, is just really to formalize and standardize that name.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Do I have no other questions? Then I'll accept a motion.
I will do it. I move to approve the proposed administrative revisions as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. We'll now move on to our item agenda number 6, which is our non-action items. Do we have any reports? Ms. Maloney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lucia Maloney. A couple items for you. The May agenda, we're looking at moving some things forward. We hope to have the LPA agreement, the funding agreement for our Colorado Street project to fund that STBG with NDOT. We're looking at bringing a contract for Center Drive design. And then hopefully we'll get the long line contract award, the long line striping and the street maintenance fund here to you as well. I wanted to talk about briefly our partnership with the Senior Center. Jack Assist has partnered with the Senior Center to try to get, make sure we have enough rides for seniors that want to get to the Senior Center for vaccines, for COVID-19 vaccines. So we have partnered with them. We're not providing too many rides under this service, but we're meeting demand, and those that would like to have a ride on Jack Assist with door-to-door pickup, we will provide that. So just want to let people know that that's aware, or that that's available. It can be booked on our, you can call Jack at 841-RIDE. Transit. Couple comments here. One, those that are here in person, our new transportation planner analyst, his name's Marquise Williams. He comes to us from Pasadena. He's here in the audience, so I won't embarrass him and make him say anything, but we are totally thrilled that he's here. He's been supporting Alex and I on some of these transit pieces. As we move forward into the next couple of months, coming on the downhill of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're really having some really great discussions internally about where we can go with transit from here. And even if we don't have piles of money, how can we better serve our customers throughout, into the future? And so to that end, you saw policies today. We're looking at the policies. We're developing, Marquise and Alex are working together to develop a rider's guide for a fixed route, a really graphic heavy brochure. We're looking to bring that to you hopefully next month. And then looking at our services, looking at fares. We've talked to this board before about going to electronic fares and contactless payment options. So we're looking at kind of bundling all that and bringing some things to get some input from you all in the next couple months. So a system refresh. Again, we couldn't be more thrilled to have Marquise, and the extra bandwidth is tremendously helpful.
Welcome.
And then finally, since it came up in the last agenda item, I will note Kelly Norman. She is the unsung hero behind the scenes. I think she came up a couple months ago with the maps that had the bubbles, if you recall, and she does a great job. She also leads some of our asset management behind the scenes, digitizing all of our assets. We've completely digitized the short line markings, the pavement markings. She led a team of engineering interns over the last year to digitize every arrow, every crosswalk, every shark's tooth. So if we are able to secure this funding for this contract for short line, we're able to more accurately scope out that contract, reduce risk for the contractor, and hopefully get better prices. So it's little things that we don't really talk about. They're not, super sexy, but Kelly's behind the scenes, and we're really beefing out that portion of our program. So with that, I will wrap up and answer any questions you have.
So can you please give us an update on when you will be taking the school zones back to the Board of Supervisors? We took action, again, I don't know which meeting, but when do you see that going back to the board?
I appreciate you asking. Apologies for not giving an update. We've drafted the staff report. It's in the district attorney's office. I'm tentatively targeting the May 20th, the second meeting in May for the board, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone Anyone have any questions or need any other status updates or recommendations for future agenda items or anything you'd like to address?
I just have a question, Madam Chair. So I don't see on here, normally we go through a list of projects. Is that going to happen still?
Remember, that's every other month,
Oh, okay.
because it didn't change enough each month for them to do it, so we did that last month, and so we'll have that on the
Okay,
next.
well, then I have a question about one project. No, I can't remember which one it was. I'll circle back to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Schutte, did you have a comment or a question?
Well, more of a comment, just reading about Jack and Jack Assist. I am just so impressed with what is taking place. And it's really wonderful when we provide opportunities for people to get where they need to go in a respectful way. So kudos to the team.
Does, any other comments, Mr. Terry? Other than this, did you sell your house? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pending.
Well, we're really going to miss you, but we wish you nothing but good luck. And happy,
Thank you very much.
happy grandchildren, right? Is that the reason? To be
That
married?
is definitely the reason. Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, no other,
I
did you remember it?
I remembered
Okay,
that.
Mr. McQuarrie?
So it was the path along the freeway to the Pete Livermore Sports Complex. It was held up because NDOT was requiring additional environmental cultural studies, and none of us really knew what those might have been, since 98% of the path is in the NDOT right away. Did we ever manage to find out?
I do know that Chris Martinovich, transportation engineer, I do know that Rob Fellows, the project manager in that project, has been coordinating with NDOT Environmental. There was some concern that we would have to hire an additional consultant to do some of that environmental work. NDOT has determined that it's not that extensive, but there is still additional work, and they're going to do it themselves. I don't know the specifics of what it is, though.
Just keep poking them. Thanks.
Okay, and if there's no further? Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is our final public comment period. Do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment at this time.
No public comment? Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 8. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
And we're adjourned. Thank you all for a great job.